entire group of faculty in fine arts and humanities. Welcome to this annual event, which has a very long tradition here at Viterbo. It is very much part of our academic culture for many, many years, and plays a very important role in bridging our academic study with real-world experiences and issues. And the Symposium has, I think, a very strong track record of examining complex, difficult, challenging, relevant social issues, which is certainly part of our Franciscan identity to support concerns of social justice and peace. Certainly if we look on social media, Netflix, YouTube, news, even walk outside this building and head west a couple blocks, we see all around us many types of violence. And that violence occurs in many different forms. Gun violence, poverty, homelessness, racial injustice, gender inequality, intolerance of people with a different sexual orientation, a different gender identity. Many examples of what I would consider to be a war on the human race. And so I think this is a very timely and appropriate issue for our faculty, our students, and our invited speakers to be examining. And I do want to draw your attention and invite you to stay after the presentation now for some faculty-led breakout sessions at 2 o'clock. They're here in the Fine Arts Center. This yellow card is floating around. Show those rooms from different disciplinary perspectives. And I'm told our keynote speaker, Reverend Williams, is en route from Minneapolis. So we will certainly enjoy hearing his presentation tonight as a member of the Ferguson, Missouri community and the recent events that have been happening there. Also, there's a wider schedule of events this entire Humanities Week that includes some poster presentations the next couple of days. We have a film showing. There's the English Department Minds at Work series tomorrow at 6 p.m. And capping off the week will be some prospective students attending campus to compete for humanities and social human behavior scholarships. So if you see visitors on campus Friday looking like they're competing, please welcome them and talk about your experience as students here at Viterbo. So I do want to give a few shout outs to a number of people who have supported this event, helped organize it. Obviously our leadership team in the administration here at Viterbo, President Artman, Dr. Glenna Temple, and those faculty who have been really directly involved in assembling this whole week of events. Dr. Susan Cosby-Ronenberg, Dr. Bill Reese, Dr. Mary Ellen Haupert, who we will meet in a second, Sister Laura Nettles, Dr. Rick Kite, the faculty who are leading the breakout sessions, of course our Fine Arts Center staff, Aramark Catering, everyone that's helped organize rooms, provide hospitality, and try and make this really impactful learning event for you as students. So as you prepare to hear these musical compositions, hear our speakers, engage in discussion, I just want to issue a challenge to you as students as part of our educational mission, and that is, I think, really appropriately taken from the first line of the prayer of St. Francis, which I'm sure we're all very familiar with, and that is, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. So as you students listen and learn today and prepare to go out into the world to be servants, to be leaders, think about ways you can be an instrument of peace.
How about now? There we go. Dirge for Rachel's tomb. A wall was built, but first the digging and the dynamite. A wall was built, and little earthquakes shook our roots. A wall was built. I was just putting up my laundry. A wall was built, now nights a fearful country. A wall was built. The soldiers come and come. A wall was built. The bells, they won't stop ringing. A wall was built, and home a heap of stones. A wall was built. Now the day's a locked door. A wall was built, and the streets for cats and dogs. A wall was built. Like cattle, the machine takes us. A wall was built. Tanks follow my boy home. A wall was built. How will the world reach us? A wall was built, and it divides me from my life. A wall was built. We ask God to accept our fasting. A wall was built, so we crawl through the sewers. How else can we reach the world? A wall was built. Please take me with you. A wall was built. Now something's closing in my heart.
Isn't it? Thank you, Beth Marzoni, for writing that. I am delighted to introduce Victoria Biggs as our Humanities Symposium speaker this afternoon. As stated on the cover of your program, soon-to-be Dr. Biggs is in the final stages of her Ph.D. in humanitarian and conflict response, research storytelling, community, and memory among Israeli and Palestinian youth. She has spent many years working with Sumud Story House, a Palestinian cultural and creative arts center in Bethlehem. Her creative workshops in Palestinian refugee camps have been predominantly focused on children with learning difficulties, mental health problems, or behavioral disturbances. Vicki is here today because of a chance meeting with Sonia Larson, one of our alums. It was at a conference in Krakow, Poland, entitled The Holocaust and the Contemporary World, where she presented Reading Anne Frank Under Occupation, Space, Empathy, and Holocaust Memory in Israel, Palestine. Sonia didn't waste any time arranging a Skype conversation with me after meeting Vicki. I felt very fortunate to have a chance to meet her, even though it was online. The possibilities that were born out of that conversation were realized in a D.B. Reinhardt Institute for Ethics and Leadership grant called Weaving Words and Music that I've been working on since last June. The student compositions that you'll hear woven into Vicki's presentation are part of that project. They're all based on the Wall Museum, which Vicki will explain to you. It's a monumental project sponsored by Sumud Story House, which displays human stories of Palestinians caught in conflict. As part of the sophomore composition project this year, my theory students read the stories that were included in the book, The Wall Museum, and they chose one to set to music. So it's not an easy project. It's a very dark project, but very relevant and timely. It has been quite a journey, and this past Monday evening at my house, they had the distinct pleasure of sharing their work with Vicki. She added details about the people that wrote the stories. It was incredibly meaningful. So we haven't really rehearsed it, we've just shared the music. It's a different kind of performance. We would all agree that this has been a profoundly meaningful learning experience for them and for me. So with that, I welcome Victoria Biggs to this main theater stage to share the humanity of her peace studies and activism, and to share the power of storytelling in her presentation, Behind the Wall. Please give her a hand.
Hello everyone, it's great to finally be here. When I travelled, I wasn't sure in what kind of shape I would arrive, as I came with a really bad cold, verging on flu. And when I got off the plane, I didn't walk, I kind of dribbled over to the immigration counter. And the immigration official was just looking at me, and behind him was a big sign saying, "Have you been to West Africa? Do you have Ebola?" And I felt he was giving me an evaluating eye. And I was like, "It's not that bad, I promise." And so I finally made it here to Viterbo to share with you a story that began in a narrow little street in North Bethlehem, which is a very heavily militarized area. And this street once ran from Jerusalem to Hebron. It was a busy main artery for transport, and it was lined with shops and restaurants and all kinds of other businesses. And around 12 years ago, the wall was built, slicing the road in two. So there is no direct route from Jerusalem to Hebron anymore, not for Palestinians at any rate. Now that wall has got several names. Proponents of military occupation and the policy against Palestinians tend to call it the security fence. In Hebrew, the name commonly used in the Israeli media and among the public is Ger HaHafrada, which means the segregation barrier. And to Palestinians in this area, it's simply called the wall. And in my first visit to the area in 2005, I discovered how it had transformed our lives. We call it the wall, but it's actually a network of wall and fences rather than just one structure. It separates people from their relatives, from their schools, and from their farmland. Under Israeli law, any land that is left untended for a certain period of time can be confiscated by the state, and this means that many Palestinian farmers have lost a source of livelihood. A few years ago, the United Nations expressed concern that of farmers in the northwest bank near Kalkia, 80% weren't receiving permits to tend their land. And currently the wall has annexed about 10% of West Bank land, including water supplies. And water is a very precious commodity in Palestine. It's very, very short. And this was where I came to. And when I arrived in this little neighborhood in North Bethlehem, I lived in a house surrounded on 3 sides by the wall, as you can see here. And the lady in the picture is the owner of the house, Clara Nastas. She's a Palestinian Christian woman, very devout, very faith-filled, very hopeful. I've always appreciated her hope. I less appreciated being dragged out of bed to pray the rosary at 6 a.m. because she thought it might help. But I deferred to her. She and her family now take in guests to make a living, as the wall destroyed the business that they used to have. They used to have a car repair garage, and as you can see, there's now no longer any space to repair cars. It's a house without daylight. And the wall went up in this neighborhood in one day, and when the 4 children of the house came home from school on that day, they started to cry, and Claire's eldest daughter said, "Mom, they've put us in a tomb." One Palestinian family in this area, the Jacquemin family, saw the terrible impact the war was having on people's lives, and they decided to do something to change it. The Jacquemins, who are a prominent Catholic family who are very involved in education, decided they would try and do this through storytelling. They would get neighbors visiting each other and sharing their stories. And this may sound like a very simple thing, but it wasn't such a simple thing at the time, because the neighborhood residents had been left so frightened of violence that they weren't coming out of their houses very often. Like, the social fabric of the neighborhood had been completely torn. At one end of the truncated road, you have the wall and the watchtower. At the other end, there's a checkpoint and a military base. And so people were spending most of their time in their houses cowed. And we had a situation where children from this area were inviting their classmates to their birthday party, and no one would come. So it was a very lonely existence, and a lot of people were leaving. The neighborhood was hemorrhaging families. And the Jacquemins decided, okay, this can't go on. We're going to start by opening up our living room so people can come and share stories of what happened to them, and we can start to rebuild this community. And so this was the origin of Sumud Story House. And interestingly, it was mainly women who took part, mainly women who started to come at first. It's now men and youth as well. But it began as a very woman-led initiative. Storytelling wasn't easy for these women at first. Any heavily militarized area in Palestine contains a lot of sterile spaces. Sterile is a military term used by the army, and it refers to places where Palestinians are not allowed to be, or where their movement is heavily restricted. But the meaning goes far, far beyond that. A former Israeli soldier testifying with the veterans organization Shovrim Shtika, Breaking the Silence, explained, "Sterile includes that they don't talk to you. You talk to them. You tell them what to do. Anyone who talks, you say, 'Shut up, I don't want to know.' Because they're always trying to tell you about their family, telling you, 'I need to work, I need to stop.' Shut up." In this context, storytelling is a political act. And at first, some women felt that it was too risky to take part. Melvina is a Palestinian Christian woman in her 80s. This is her in the center here, the one with the traditional headdress and the beautiful smile. And when she was invited to Sumud House, she hesitated in case the army saw her as a political activist and stripped her of her right to travel to Jerusalem, which is 5 miles down the road and where most of her family are. Protests and demonstrations are actually illegal for Palestinians under military law, and the army defines a demonstration as an unauthorized gathering of 10 or more people. So Melvina's son actually lost his Jerusalem access just for walking down a street and being photographed in an area where a demonstration happened to be. So Melvina's fear wasn't unfounded, but in the end she decided to come. And after several years of participation in Sumud Story House, in our traditional choir, which you see here, and in a range of other activities, she shared a story that was hung on the wall. The wall is on my heart. And this is what she wrote. After the wall around Rachel's tomb was built, I felt terrible. Nobody was walking here. Only the cats and dogs. The wall creates a feeling, the feeling that it surrounds you, that you're not permitted to move. Every time, every day you see the wall. When I look outside through the window to see the sunrise or the sunset, the wall is in front of me. When I go to the wall, I feel that something closes in on my heart, as if the wall is on my heart. When I see the wall, I also feel ashamed of myself, because it's created by human beings. And when she came to Sumud Story House, Melvina joined a very lively, resilient community of women. It's here I should tell you the meaning of the Arabic word sumud. It means resilience or steadfastness. And this is the quality that the Jacquemin family were trying to cultivate in the neighborhood. And it's perfectly encapsulated by this other story from a group of women from the Jalazon refugee camp that was told in the years of the first Intifada, at a time when they were often struggling to prepare meals. In the Jalazon refugee camp, north of Ramallah, during a curfew, the Israeli military severed the supply of gas and electricity. The women made a communal fire, which was kept burning with old shoes and rags when the wood had run out. When the soldiers came to put the fire out and throw away the dough, the women resisted, shouting, "Go tell your leaders, no matter what you do, no matter what kind of restrictions you impose on us, we will not allow our children to starve. We will find a way to bake bread, and all your efforts to destroy our spirits are not going to succeed. What God has created, no one can destroy." And when I came here to Viterbo, I found that these two stories had inspired some of the musicians to create songs. And we're going to listen to them now. Claire, the wall is on my heart.